The best advice I read in a book about orchids, which claimed it was not advice you would read anywhere else, was to limit your collection to just a few plants. Oh no, my life is really busy right now, and even though I take so much comfort in my orchids, not to mention they're my job, maybe I do need to give most of them away. The advice in the book must be right, because it's written in a book.
In a book, huh?
Wait a second. Who wrote this book? What do they know about me and what I do and what I like and what I should do? Nope, I think I can do better than that book. Okay, now for the explanation. If you missed the video or you're new to my channel, you may not know the setup that I have my orchids in. It is a full sphagnum moss setup, and I do have a video repotting an orchid in it down below in the description. So this means that my orchid pots are very wicking generally. So if I leave water in a dish below the pot, the sphagnum moss will absorb it completely if it is dry enough, and it will distribute it throughout its volume, making it very, very even. Sphagnum moss does not layer, meaning that it will not have a wet layer at the bottom and a very dry layer at the top. No, it will always be even. So obviously it does not matter if I have one orchid in one dish absorbing the water from below, or 15 orchids in a tray absorbing the water from below. Hence, if I have a deep enough tray, all of the pots will get evenly watered. Now, this technique obviously has its risks. As you can see, the orchids are very close to each other, even touching each other, so the risk of sharing pests might be greater. For me though, having orchids close is not an issue. Actually, most of my orchids are already sitting close to each other, even if not on the same tray, because I have found solutions to reduce the risk of sharing pests, such as keeping some orchids separated than everything else in some cabinets, or using leaf shine as a preventative from time to time, which actually does a very good job in a short amount of time. I don't have to prepare solutions and all of that, and I got proficient in using it so that I don't actually spray too much of it and damage my orchids. It's all about experience. The more you practice something, the better you get at it. It is a rule of nature, quote unquote. So yeah, closeness is not a problem for me actually, but it's worth mentioning because it might be for others. Also, if the orchids have pests inside their pots, like snails, then again, yes, they can share that pest. However, the risk is a little mitigated because one, these are all repotted orchids, so I made sure to treat them with hydrogen peroxide, and I am very, very sure they have no snail. And second, the water is absorbed so fast that the snail doesn't really have much time to travel in between pots because the tray in an hour or so will be completely dry. But snails are not the only things they can share. They can also share some infections and other pathogens. And yes, again, that is a risk. But again, the risk in my opinion is a little bit more mitigated because the sphagnum moss has such strong wicking capabilities that the water doesn't get to be shared all that much. As I was saying, in 1 hour, the tray is going to be bone dry. Each pot will absorb however much it can, and trust me, it will not reach saturation. I have 15 pots full of sphagnum moss there. So the circulation of the water is just one way, up into the pot, not necessarily communicating with the other pots, but obviously the risk is still there. And if you know me, you know that I do not like to share water. Well, in an instance such as this, I might be tempted to bend the rule a little bit because, as I was saying, in my opinion, the risk is severely, severely diminished. Not to mention, if the orchids are older in my collection and I know them for years and I know they don't have issues, then again, I am more comfortable doing this arrangement, putting them so close in order to save me some time. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, how much time did I just save? These are 15, or did I count correctly? Yeah, These are 15 orchids that I just watered in a matter of seconds, which is amazing, don't you think? This is how many nurseries actually get away with things. They also use capillary mats, which you can make yourself. You can buy some felt from the craft store and actually put it underneath. I suggest you buy black, just so you don't attract algae, but I would prefer not to do it because I don't want a wet layer under the pots. It's not needed. I like to have a dry tray. Now, the idea of this is not to put your orchids in a tray, water them in a tray, and then put them back in their decorative containers or in their places or whatever. No, the idea is to actually keep your orchids like this in the tray rather than having decorative pots. Otherwise, if you're thinking of just watering them like this, you could, but I don't see how it will save you time, because it does actually take time to get all of your orchids out of their pots, put them in the tray, arrange the tray, put the water, then after an hour or two or whatever, put them back in their decorative pot and then put them in their places. That takes a lot of time, and you are much better off to just water inside the decorative pots, which is another idea that I currently use. I have a video on it, check it down below, but the tray idea is even faster if you keep your orchids like this from the get-go. So that's the whole point of it. You can also split your orchids into smaller trays, and in this way you can limit sharing of pathogens and so on, which is always a risk, even if minimal. But obviously, the bigger the tray, the more orchids you have in there, the easier and faster it is to water. All you need to do is just put water in that tray, and with a bigger watering can that has a thicker spout, you can obviously water faster than 10 seconds. And if you think you can't really get away with something like this because of your environment, maybe it's kind of cool and humid, you know what? Just give it a go. Trial and error. You never know until you do it. The alternative maybe is to give up part of your collection. If you want to do that, do it. But if you don't, just try this first, because remember, you don't need to saturate the pots. You can just add a little bit of water just to make them a little moist. They don't need to be soggy, and it's easy not to make them soggy. So bottom line, if my life takes such a turn that I am forced to give away my orchids, guess what? I will not give away my orchids, because they are my passion, because they make me feel good, and I'm sure most of you here on the channel find relief and escape in your orchids. And just because unexpected things happen in your life, like in everybody's life, it doesn't mean you have to give up your passion just because a book says so. And yes, you can enjoy 2-3 orchids, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to enjoy 15, then we gotta get creative. And step number 1 is to forget whatever books say, because you have to remember something. People have been saying whatever crossed their mind since the dawn of humankind, whether it's scribbling in caves or writing on scrolls or writing in books or writing on the internet on Facebook. People have been saying whatever crosses their mind, and sometimes it's not good things. So books, in my opinion, do not hold any more authority over the internet. If you think advice is fishy, then try to be creative and try to make your hobby your own. And if this inspires you, and if this makes sure that your hobby remains in place and here to de-stress you and make you feel better through hard times, then there you go. I'm here to solve your issue. Maybe that is your solution. I really don't like people telling me what to do, don't I? Alrighty guys, that's about it. I hope this was useful. And if you don't consider this setup worth it, hey, maybe it's a good idea for a vacation, right? Alrighty, so that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye.